Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Just wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for being with us here today. We appreciate your time. We know it takes time out of your day to come and join us and talk about some very important matters. So I just wanted to say welcome to everyone. I know more people are getting the notification that we've started. And as we're waiting for everyone to continue to join us, we'd love to tell you a bit more about ForAfrika. And so as people are joining us. So in case you didn't know, ForAfrika is formerly known as Joint Aid Management. It's the largest African-led humanitarian and development organization globally. We were founded in 1984 in response to a famine in Mozambique. Today, we operate in 8 African countries, focusing on emergency response, clean water, sanitation, food security, health and nutrition, and education and economic empowerment. We are rooted in local communities. ForAfrika's mission is to empower 20 million Africans to sustainably provide for themselves by 2032. In 2024 alone, we reached over 6 million people in community-led programs that transformed lives. And so I'd like to just right now, if it's okay, we'll play a quick video about ForAfrika as people continue to join us. And so we'll play that video right now. So I don't think we have audio. So maybe we can try that one more time. So sorry, everyone, but we don't have audio. So why don't we go ahead and move on? So today we are going to be talking about data monitoring and evaluation. And so I would like to introduce our guest today is Fabio Becerra. He's the director of DMEAL at ForAfrika, where he leads evidence generation and learning platforms for impact decisions. He has worked for the past 12 years developing and managing M&E systems and humanitarian and development programs in Latin America, the Middle East, and the UN within UN agencies and INGOs. In Brazil, he led a consultancy, Minds for Development, that worked with NGOs and foundations to design social programs and public policy interventions in the areas of education and culture, aimed at social change through the holistic development of youth. Fabio was born in Brazil. He holds degrees in business administration and law from the Federal University of Paraíba, and the master's degree in development and management and evaluation from the University of Antwerp. Fabio has recently been awarded the Emergency Evaluator Prize by the African Evidence Network, and for his work in impact and measurement at ForAfrika. So thank you so much for joining us today, Fabio. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Stephanie, for the invitation. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I'm excited for the conversation. I know today we'll give an overview on the way that we're measuring impact, our evidence journey. But knowing it's only an overview, I encourage the audience to submit questions on what they would like to know a bit more in depth, and also reach out afterwards for further engagements.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you do have a question, please use chat. and we will take those questions. We'll pause midway to take questions, and then at the end of the presentation, we will also take a Q&A. So Fabio, just to kind of get us started today, maybe you can kind of start us telling us about the beginnings of DMeal at ForAfrika when you first came to the organization.
Sure. I joined ForAfrika at the beginning of 2023, and it was really a pivotal moment. The organization was going through a major strategic transformation. As you mentioned, we were coming from the times of joint aid management and rebranding into ForAfrika, and this was just an external sign of a whole new visualization of how we could contribute to the development of communities in the African continent. So we went from this strong history and experience in humanitarian development interventions for 35 plus years into now reflecting and shifting our approach to think more longer term, to think impact, and now to focus on self-sufficiency of the communities we serve. So with the ambitious goal of supporting 20 million Africans to become self-sufficient by 2032 and to empower 6 million to have a platform to thrive, there came then as well questions like, how do we define self-sufficiency? How do we monitor self-sufficiency? So we went on a journey to really move from a much more project-based type of monitoring data that was very strong on the delivery, on the emergency short-term type of interventions, to now be able to connect all this continuum from emergency recovery all the way to transformational development, our support to the communities and this journey, this transformation that they're going through. Part of the challenge was then to harmonize what we're doing in different country offices. So right now we have operations in 8 country offices, Central, Eastern, Southern Africa, and they share quite a diverse background and context. So what we do in Rwanda is not the same thing exactly we do in Angola or South Africa, South Sudan. So finding a way to have a system that allowed us to compare performances, to keep track together as an organization as a whole, how are we progressing, but at the same time still leave room for those particularities, for the context, for the individualities. So it was a very exciting opportunity for me. I had worked with large organizations before, but in many ways already with a system that had been set up and limited room for change. And what I found in ForAfrika at that time really moved me. First, because I noticed leadership was genuinely committed to using evidence for decision making, not just for reporting. And then I was empowered with pretty much a blank paper and the task here, go and design how are we measuring impact from scratch. So being able to steer this process, but especially learn from this wealth of experience, our teams in all the country offices, what we had been doing, the local communities' inputs as well, was the most rewarding. And in the end, the task was really to develop a system that could quantify what we call communities plan A, right? Their own decisions, their own pathways towards self-sufficiency, and find a way to convert that into not just numbers, but knowledge that can help us then improve our support, our engagement with them.
Wow, so you literally did have a blank paper to design all this.
Yeah, I was very, very happy about it, and a little bit scared by the challenge as well.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. So in our DMeal approach, we emphasize community empowerment as the anchor. And we want to make sure that people have the capacity to make their own informed decisions and choose the pathways that best serve them long term. But how are we balancing program priorities along with enabling true self-sufficiency for the communities? And what lessons are we drawing from those approaches to strengthen ours?
Yeah, so the word balance here is really key, and this call to balance and interest in quantifying and comparing progress, as I mentioned, as well as granting autonomy, independence, and ensuring that really each household, each community can choose their own path. So what we're talking about is really the capacity of households to choose among good options instead of trying to make the best choice out of limited possibilities. So choice became the center of our thinking and the center for our definition of self-sufficiency. So we focused on defining the self-sufficiency as households having access to a bundle of resources and capabilities, having options, which they could then transform in order to meet their basic needs with autonomy, with resilience, sustaining these gains across time without external support. So when we anchored the thinking around this, then we started to see, okay, how do we then materialize this framework? So we developed a impact monitoring framework based on the sustainable livelihoods theory. Basically, we're recognizing that self-sufficiency is not just economic, that these choices, these resources, they need to touch on different areas and different dimensions. So we're bringing into this calculation 22 indicators aligned to sector best practices. They're all aligned to the SDGs as well. Where we could, we used what already existed. We're not trying to create things just for the sake of doing something new. But the major innovation is really creating this bundle, combining dimensions in natural resources, physical resources, as in infrastructure, public services, then individual capabilities. How are the household members educated? How well enough are they in health as well, in nutrition? A financial dimension as well. How much assets, productive tools does the household have access to? Level of savings, access to markets. And then a big pillar also around social cohesion. So we want to know, and we have seen through experience, through more than 4 decades of work, that sometimes during an emergency, when something critical happens, the first responders are normally those in the community themselves. And the strongest networks that create the safety nets are the community members, the different families, the different social groups as well. So that's a component that we have brought in to our impact monitoring as well, to ensure that as we progress on that continuum I mentioned, the community can then continue leading their development. But you asked about how are we voicing then the community's interest in this? And that is when we bring in, let's say, the second stage of our impact monitoring. So the first was quantitative indicators. We do a big survey, we get numbers, right? We need some sort of comparison mode. The second stage that we're starting this year, we're working on until the end of 2026, is to bring in a strong qualitative approach as well. We want to hear from communities to understand not just on how change has happened, which will bring more depth to our analysis to really understand the triggers, the mechanisms that are leading to this impact, but we also want to hear from them, how do they understand self-sufficiency? Are our definitions aligned? Do we need to give different weights to different indicators that we're bringing to this methodology? So this is this moment where we realign, we revisit the methodology, and we really hand over a lot of the agency, a lot of the power on how we measure impact back to the communities themselves. And this really enables us to work as peers, right? We're not supervisors, we're not just foreign agents. We're really trying to create a common plan on how we all develop together.
Yeah, I think that's so great. Like you said, it's a common plan and working together as peers, right? And so I think that's a great point, something to highlight. And so when you're looking at our DMEO findings, right now, do we have any evidence or indications from our own work that in the communities that we're working in that are moving forward to greater self-sufficiency? Maybe you have a couple of concrete cases you can help illustrate for these things and tell us about them, the effectiveness of the community empowerment approach?
Sure. So we in this journey that I mentioned, we were measuring short-term impacts. We now have short-term results. We did a baseline for impact. We're also trying to fill in the middle, right? Stories about midterm result changes in the different areas, in these different areas of resources that make our impact framework. So in Rwanda, for example, when we look at economic empowerment and livelihoods, we just did a rapid social return on investment analysis this year, just a month ago. And we found very exciting evidence of how the project we did with the communities digitalizing community saving groups. So this is already an existing mechanism. People come together, they save money, they lend among themselves with a small interest rate. This was all paper-based, right? So we sat together with them, we understood the process, and then how can we improve? How can we make it more efficient? How can we make it so that there's more trust in the process as well? So by digitalizing this, we then achieved a 12-to-1 ratio on social return on investments. So with just $7,000 invested in this pilot, we gained in time saving alone $70,000, and then in increased income and savings as well, $10,000, and then improved health and education outcomes, $6,000 when we monetize all of that. So this is a great indication, first indication that when we understand the plan A of the communities and we come in just to support and leverage, we can really blow it out of the roof and achieve greater results. In another context, in another area of work, for example, in South Sudan, in 2023 and 24, we were really puzzled and interested in understanding how come in certain areas where we worked, where acute malnutrition is really above emergency thresholds, we were still seeing, 42% of poor households that had well-nourished children. So how come are they defeating the odds and going against the statistics? So we did a positive deviance study, and we really learned about this local knowledge on how to use different ingredients and have a well-balanced diet with local ingredients. What were the different hygiene practices? What made their attitude towards health services different? And then once we understood that, we amplified and we multiplied all this knowledge to different communities. And we got, for example, a reduction of 60% in diarrhea disease, which is one of the key triggers for malnutrition in that area. But to give you one example that really show us how we can go beyond one sector, generate holistic change, I like to bring the story of Tomas in Mozambique. I think we have a couple pictures of Tomas here so that you can understand what I'm talking about as well. So Tomas is from the central south area of Mozambique in Ambani province. And before the project, Tomas was in a situation where his household was food insecure. They're constantly hit by cyclones and floods or droughts. So agriculture was really unreliable as a food source. His children were on and off school, and he was living in a mud and thatch house. So what we did was work with a combination of programs. So Tomas participated in an agricultural program, received some climate-resistant crop seedlings, but also training for more resilient farming. And then we also supported to strengthen that community saving group so that they could start transforming the revenue that they made out of agriculture. What you were seeing on the picture below was already part of Tomas' crops harvest, 2 years later. So in 2 years, Tomas went from that situation to now making $10,000 a year. He's harvesting 2 different crops, interchanging them, his children are going to school, well-dressed, with materials. He moved on from just agriculture to now livestock rearing as well. He has a house that is brick made solely with his money and savings. And more importantly, he's really a multiplier. So people from the community seeing that transformation started asking, and he became now a trainer of the practices. He started to share the seedlings so that more people could also follow his path. So it's really the main lesson for us, or the common thread in these stories, is that communities, they have adaptive capacity. Our work is really to identify what works and support improving, supporting scaling so that we can reach more.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thomas, I mean, that's unbelievable. And the fact that he's just training others and spreading the gospel, if you will. So just right now, we're going to take, before we move on, I want to take some questions. So if you do have questions, please use chat. And we do have one question for you, Fabio. But yeah, so please, if you have questions, you can use chat to ask those questions, and we will answer them. So Fabio, here's one question. What tools do you use in indicator development, especially the quality indicators?
Should I wait for all the questions or jump straight in?
Oh, yeah, that's just one so far.
All right.
Same question.
Tools for monitoring, sorry, or designing. I didn't understand the beginning.
What tools do you use in indicator development?
Okay.
Especially qualifying. It says qual indicators. It could be qualifying.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Qualitative, most probably.
Qualitative,
So
yeah.
we part of what we did in moving from scattered data, project-based data, all the way to a framework that connects activities to impact was to analyze all the work that we're doing in the country offices and try to harmonize all of those results. So we went from project-based monitoring to tracking where, for example, we would see we're tracking the same activity, the same result by 5 different names or ways, right? So we try to harmonize that in a common list of results and indicators for all the country offices, where it aligns not just how we are monitoring, but also how we are designing the programs. When we're doing this exercise, we really looked at what the sector, each specific program sector, wash, water sanitation, education, health and nutrition, what the thought leaders were, the academic institutions, UN agencies, development partners, the SDGs as a major framework. How are they defining some of these results and monitoring? And where we found that there was strong knowledge already, well, a solid foundation, everyone is using the same thing, we also adopted. Where we found that there was a gap, that's when we try to fill that gap with specific indicators. In terms of qualitative, we're always trying to match the numbers with an explanation for how that number is changing. So we are dividing our results into different timeframes: short-term, mid-term, long-term types of results or outcomes, if you want to call. And on each of these stages, we are foreseeing a different type of behavioral change, a different type of qualitative change. So we focused our qualitative indicators on the short term, on knowledge change, on individual attitude change. On the midterm, we're trying to see behavior change individually and some signs already of collective change. And then on the long-term change, long-term results, we're getting qualitative indicators that point now to system change, right? Policy change, frameworks, more of a community level type of change. So this, I hope I answered the question. And
Yeah. I think that's good. I think that's good. So, so while we go ahead and move on, I know you have some data you want to share. So I guess my next question is kind of moving into that. So how are we moving maybe from like a scattered, cases to more of a systematic approach that monitors impact at an organizational level? Like how are we presenting our impact baseline to help illustrate both the scale of the challenge and the framework we're using to address it?
Yeah, so the first step, Stephanie, as you mentioned, from scatter to systematic approach was that harmonization of results and indicators I just talked about. But then we noticed that there were some bottlenecks also on that were influencing the quality of the data, reliability of that data, particularly because we still had a lot of things that were paper-based, analysis in Excel sheet, and so on. So after we worked on the foundations, we are now moving, and this year we're implementing a system called Activity Info, which brings in technology to help us have a central data repository, really for real-time monitoring. So this enables us to make faster decisions, but also donors, partners to get fed information in real time, understand also more closely how we are progressing. So we're really trying to move from this short-term type of analysis tracking to annual impact monitoring. I have one slide, if we can put it on the screen. I promise it's the only slide I'm going to show today, but just to highlight a bit of the numbers and some results that we saw with our impact baseline.
Okay, there's Thomas again. Oh, there it is.
All right. So we did a baseline last year, and this has contributed to really anchoring our programming, our strategy on data and evidence that can point us towards our vision, our impact target of 20 million Africans reaching self-sufficiency by 2032. So on this baseline, we interviewed in 6 countries, more than 2,500 households, covering all those 22 indicators. And not to our surprise, but it's still very impressive how much there is of a difference, of a variation in self-sufficiency when we look at the different countries where we are operating. So we have a range, for example, in average 1.5% of the households we work with in South Sudan are self-sufficient, only 1.5, while in South Africa and Rwanda, we're above 40%. So when we get that data, immediately we already have a yellow flag that we cannot do the same thing everywhere, right? And then, so this is the first call, and it's good for us to get evidence that helps us justify what we were already trying to do through our programming. But then when we disaggregate these 22 indicators for each of the country offices, we start to get interesting information on where are those households more vulnerable? Where should we direct resources, efforts, technical capacity to engage with the communities in each of those country offices? Sometimes it might be on land access. In other cases, it might be on health services. So it really enables us to tailor to a great level of detail our country strategies. And this is what we started doing last year. It was a great moment because we were just developing a 3-year strategic plan. So this data came in and enabled us to then anchor the priorities, anchor the resource allocation really on what the impact baseline was showing to us. Just a couple things that you're seeing on the screen here. Last year, we were able to reach close to 2.4 million people with more than 6 million activities because we understood that our work is, we're addressing a complex problem and we need this multi-sectoral solution. We started looking as well into what percentage of the people we engage with are really benefiting from this combination of interventions. So we got 30% of the people we already work with are participating in these many types of activities. We're also interested in understanding the dimension of our reach in the communities. We want to get whole communities self-sufficient, so we cannot work just with pilot programs. Right now, we work directly with 15% of the population in those communities where we are at, which is already a good point, and we want to expand on that. And then make sure that we're not focusing just on finance, not just on agriculture, not just on health, but that we're keeping a healthy balance of the different sectors according to the needs of each community.
So I guess that takes us, I know we've come to the end of our time, but so I guess maybe this segues to this last question. So building on what we've learned so far and what you've shared, what do we still want to achieve? And where do we want to go from here in advancing our community empowerment and self-sufficiency goals?
That's a good question. And of course, what keeps me moving every day, right? So beyond continuing what I have just mentioned, there is one area that we want to strengthen and transform, take to a different level, and where I think we can really bring innovation and technology as a partner here. So the qualitative part, the engagement with communities, the empowerment and agency that we want to place at communities' hands on how we're measuring impact. Right now, we have a bottleneck, a barrier for us to achieve scale, which is the reach and language. So we're working in communities that together, they add up to dozens, if not hundreds of different local languages. And the process of translating that to, let's say, English, and then after we translate, we transcribe and analyze, this really limits the scale of our interaction. So we have been brainstorming with some partners. We're also seeking other partners, both in the technology, the thinking, but also in funding, for us to integrate AI as a one tool and really streamline this communication. We have seen some cases where this worked well, and we're confident that we can make some tweaks and make it work in our favor as well, so that we can now grow in scale, we can systematize, we can streamline more this communication, this analysis, and move from getting data from communities to really measuring for communities and enabling them to make decisions based on all of this information that we're generating together.
Wonderful. Gosh, thank you so much. So if you have any questions, please let us know. And I think we had a couple more questions, Fabio, and I think you answered actually the second question. This next question is, what innovative monitoring tools or methods are helping ForAfrika track progress more effectively? So you might have touched on part of this already. So I don't know if you want to add to that or elaborate any more.
I will say, well, reach out. I can send the links, but also we are trying to keep our website updated with our DMEO framework, which explains how we are conducting evidence generation and use across the program cycle. We are also publishing how we're incorporating activity info as our tool. We should have there already our whole impact framework explaining the methodology in detail, so everyone can take a sneak peek and also help us with feedback on how we can improve.
That's great. That's wonderful. And so we have this other question. Again, some of these questions you might have already touched on. So the next question is, how can we prove whether a change is due to a single intervention or the combined efforts of multiple actors and factors?
Oh, the nightmare of every evaluator, attribution. So we, right at the very beginning, we made a conscious choice of not going for direct attribution, but rather work with the sense of contribution, right? So we're not claiming that the impact change is solely because of what we do. On one hand, because to achieve that, we need partnerships. Self-sufficiency is broad, our contexts are broad, and what we're trying to do is convene resources, convene technical capacity to enhance the community's ability to move towards self-sufficiency. So we acknowledge by default the contribution of other agents as well. On the other hand, what we're trying to do is bring in the qualitative components. We can start to tease out which were the strongest mechanisms that contributed to that change. So we're hoping by, and there's a whole methodology there, we can talk in details later, but what we're bringing in the qualitative component is try to reduce the bias in the narratives and understand from the community perspective what contributed the most or played a relevant role in that transformation. And we're hoping to see definitely ForAfrika popping out as one of these mechanisms.
Well, wonderful. Well, I don't think that we have any more questions, but thank you so much, Fabio. And I know that, you know, if you would like to get in contact with Fabio, we're going to put a place card up with my contact information and also the ForAfrika website. And you can please connect with us. And so if you have more questions for Fabio, we want to be mindful of everyone's time. Please reach out to me. We have one more question. So as the contact information stays up, this last question is, tell us more of how you have integrated AI into data.
We have not yet systematically. We have experimented with in data analysis for some studies and evaluations. We are on the thinking ideation process of how we can bring that to the qualitative side of impact monitoring. But institutionally, we have not yet incorporated. Mostly when it comes to data analysis, we have experimented with different AI agents, both on quantitative analysis as well as systematizing qualitative narratives with coding, with grouping by thematic areas. But this has been done at pilots and individual exercises. Again, very happy to share some of the prompts and the process if you reach out bilaterally afterwards.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Fabio, again. And again, if you would like to connect with Fabio or with me, this is our contact information, and I can connect you to Fabio. Feel free to reach out with me also with any questions. Thank you so much for attending today. And I think as we exit out, we're going to try to play our video one more time. And we're going to cross our fingers as audio. But thank you so much, Fabio, for joining us today. We appreciate your insights and your talent and your calling that you truly do have in this area. And so we fully recognize that. But thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and taking your time. And we look forward to connecting with everyone soon. Thank you.
Stephanie and everyone.
Thank you. I think we'll cue video.
Much has been said about Africa.
I've never seen people in this kind of condition.
Stories that shape the way the world sees us. But most haven't seen the full story that we have to tell. And the future of Africa is unfolding before our eyes. But it won't happen on its own. So together we work, risk, plan, coordinate, build, protect, provide, and love. Not everyone can do what we do, but we are Africans, and this is our home. See Africa as we do, where the full potential of the most abundant continent on the planet is being realized. Let's write a new story together. We are ForAfrika.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And we're done. That was really good.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Fabio. That was fantastic. Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Mariki. Thank you, Manshi.
Thank you all.